Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I am Jason Kuchma, the Executive Director for your Toledo Lucas County Public Library. We are so glad that you are joining us here tonight. A number of our guests tonight are enjoying a delicious pizza dinner from Vito's as part of our new virtual authors events. If you are interested in joining one of our upcoming authors events and you want to have that enhanced experience, you can join us in three ways. You can watch free on the library's Facebook page, as many of you are. You can purchase a copy of the book with a signed book plate for $10 and pick it up after the release date and watch through a secure Zoom link. Or, and here's the kicker, our friends in the greater Toledo region can purchase the enhanced experience and receive a copy of the book with a signed book plate, have dinner at a local restaurant, delivered to your door the night of the program, and watch through a secure Zoom link. So I'm not going to tell you which option is the best for you, but I have seen the menus for the upcoming events, and you might want to take a look at some of your options. You can read about those upcoming events on our website at toledolibrary.org/authors. That's toledolibrary.org/authors. And while you're there, you will see that in the coming weeks, we have the following incredible people joining us. This Friday, we have U.S. Senator from Montana, John Tester, in conversation with his friend and colleague, former Senator Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota. On Tuesday, September 22nd, we welcome Sonia Manzano, who many of you might remember as the illustrious Maria from Sesame Street. And on October 22nd, we welcome the inspirational American poet and civil rights activist, Nikki Giovanni. There are a ton more people, including Teresa Caputo, Kyle Mills, and a repeat visit from Dr. Michael Roizen. All of these events include options for the enhanced experience with a special meal delivered to your home. And you can check out those options again and the dates at toledolibrary.org/authors. None of this would be possible without the generous financial support of the Library Legacy Foundation. As many of you know, the gifts to the Library Legacy Foundation allow the library to put on an incredible program of authors and remain a constant positive force in our community. We are also incredibly grateful for our presenting media sponsors, The Blade and Buckeye Broadband, and our supporting sponsors, Bureau Group, and our community sponsor, Friends of the Library. Our program tonight is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel later. We have staff monitoring the Facebook Live and the Zoom chat function, so please send in your questions at any time during the discussion. We'll triage those and monitor them and feed them in at the right moments. I am so pleased right now to introduce our moderator for the evening. She's been with Toledo Lucas County Public Library for almost 34 years, and she works right now as our Youth Services Coordinator. Please join me in welcoming Nancy Eames. There she is. Hi, Nancy.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Jason.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Great. And now to our featured author for the evening. As part of the creative team behind the American Girl series, she has written many of the American Girl books about Felicity, Josephina, Samantha, Kit, Molly, and Mary Ellen. She wrote American Girl's Welly Wisher and Hopscotch Hill school books. She has also written numerous leveled readers, songs, stories, poems, and plays for educational publishers, and she is the editorial director of the Boys Camp series. In her new series, Science, Technology, Kindness, and Humor are an unbeatable combination. Izzy Newton and the SMART squad team up and use the scientific method to solve mysteries and reveal truths. Get it? SMART. My 6-year-old daughter is anxiously awaiting this. I'm looking forward to introducing that to her. Please join me in welcoming Valerie Tripp. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here tonight.
Hello, Valerie. It's so nice to meet you in this virtual way. I'm excited to talk with you tonight. I've been reading your books for my entire career as a children's librarian, and I love the new one. Finished it yesterday on my iPad, so thank you. We're excited about this new series. I have questions, and I think our viewers have questions, so I'll jump in, and then as we hear from them, I'll pass those questions along too. So I, as I said, I read the book, but for those who haven't had a chance to read it yet, can you give us a synopsis of the first story in the series?
The first story is called Izzy Newton and the Smart Squad, Absolute Hero. And Absolute Hero is actually a play on the words absolute zero, which is the coldest possible temperature. This is a STEM series, a STEM fiction series. And it's about 5 girls who are starting middle school, and they like to solve mysteries that seem to be sort of plaguing their school. And the first mystery is absolute zero. Why is the school so cold? And they apply the scientific method, and they have lots of hypotheses, and they do lots of experiments, and they have lots of, shall we say, wrong turns before they solve the mystery. At the same time that they're working on this literal mystery in their school, there's also a mystery of sort of chilliness that is affecting some of the members of this group of 5 friends. And so they want to solve that mystery too, and figure out why does there seem to be sort of a frosty feeling between some members of the group. So we have 2 mysteries going on at the same time.
Well, I certainly loved it. And I especially loved the clever wordplay and all of those science allusions. One of my favorite quotes from the book was when Charlie says, "Izzy Newton's in motion and there's no stopping her." Can you talk about the girls' names and how you picked those?
Yes, the girls are named after very famous scientists. To whom we all owe tremendous debts of gratitude. We all benefit from the wonderful discoveries that these scientists made. Some of them lived very long ago, 400 years ago. Izzy is named after Isaac Newton, who came up with the 3 of Newton's laws and discovered gravity, invented calculus, and Izzy is a physicist, just like Isaac Newton. And then I love doing fun things like Isaac Newton played the flute, so I had Izzy play the flute also. And Isaac Newton's best friend was named John Wickens, so Izzy has a cat named Wickens. So I like sort of feeding in those little secret things that Izzy had in common with Isaac Newton. One of her friends is named Allie Einstein. She's named after Albert Einstein. And Allie loves math. And sort of her world philosophy too is the more the merrier, bring it on. And she's exuberant, and she gets very carried away, and she's just always ready to try the next thing, which means she doesn't always finish everything she starts. And she's like Albert Einstein in that she plays the violin, and she loves to sail, and in that she's a very good friend, and she likes humor a great deal. Albert Einstein was very kind of a practical joker, actually. And then also Izzy has a friend named Charlie Darwin, and Charlie loves everything that grows, plants, animals, worms, snakes, you name it. And she has that wonderful ability that people who spend a lot of time with animals have, which is to be quietly observant. And she notices people's body language, and she is a great athlete herself as well. She's very tall and very strong and a very fast runner. And like Charles Darwin, she loves to explore. She realizes that people evolve and change just the way animals evolved and changed. So she has that in common with Charles Darwin. Then another one of Izzy's friends is named Marie Curie, and she's a chemist, and she loves to mix things up and stir things up. She loves to cook, and she loves to kind of mix disparate elements of things together. She also likes to sort of experiment on her own appearance. So she'll do things like dye a strand of her hair pink, and then the next week it'll be green, and then it'll be purple. And she makes her sneakers glow in the dark. And she, like chemistry, she's also sort of mercurial and changeable and sort of unpredictable and a little bit explosive sometimes, even the way things can explode in chemistry. And then Izzy has another friend named Gina Carver, who's named after George Washington Carver, who was an inventor. And Gina is an inventor. In the first book, she helps the girls build a robot out of a teddy bear and an old roller skate. And like most inventors, Gina's actually more interested in what could be and hasn't quite been invented yet than what's right in front of her. And also, like many creative people, Gina's a little, shall we say, chaotic. Her room is packed. Her locker is packed. Her backpack is packed, full of things that she might need for some of her inventions in the future. And I love that wonderful creative attitude that, mess is part of the creative process. Sometimes we have to have things a little bit messy around us before we could put them all together and tidy them up and make a new invention. So those are the 5 characters. And as you can see, each one is interested in a different field of science, and they pool those interests and talents and abilities and put those to work to solve the mysteries. And I loved showing that really the best teams are made up of people who have very different abilities. You never know which is going to be the suggestion that is really the most helpful, and that it's the synergy, it's that group working together that comes up with the solution, which is not to say that they don't, as I said before, make some wrong turns along the way. And that was another thing I wanted to be very clear about, that what looks like a failure can sometimes be the best thing that could happen, because it alerts you to another solution, or it draws your attention in a different way. So I love making it clear that science is all about trying again and again and again. And that's what these girls do. And they have a lot of fun along the way.
They do. And I love how you added so many factual things into the story just as part of it. For example, I did not know that you could catch bees in a bag.
Right.
And I'm not sure that I would be willing to do it, but it was great that Izzy did.
Yes, she was very brave to do that.
Yeah, she was. And bravery is something that it sounds like she struggles with a little bit. So,
Yes,
it was,
I'm glad you mentioned that, because she's an unusual main character in that she's quiet and she's shy. She doesn't like speaking in front of groups. She doesn't have to be the center. She doesn't want to be the center of attention. And so her journey is toward more confidence. And that makes her a wonderful character to write about. Thanks for mentioning that.
Oh, yeah. Well, so as we go forward in the series, will Izzy always be sort of the lead in this group?
I was just talking to my editor about that today. I think that there will be 3 books where we'll follow Izzy's arc toward that confidence. The second book is about her facing that fear of speaking to a group. And the third group is where you see her really be even proactive. And instead of just reacting to a dangerous situation or anything, she's really proactive in solving problems. So yes, I think the first 3 books will feature Izzy, and then after that, you tell me, Nancy, who would you like to? I'll see who should we move on to next? I love them all, and they're all so different.
I do. I love Charlie.
I do too.
I think she was one of my favorites. When she's happily eating kale chips from her parents' garden and
Yes.
Trying to get the other kids to be interested in some of the things that she loves. She was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I like her too. And also, I love it that both of her parents are veterinarians. So when we go to her house, we can play with a whole bunch of puppies.
Yes.
So I just love that. I think that's so much fun. I think her house would be a very fun one to visit.
I definitely agree. And I want to say for our readers who are listening that I am going to ask you some American Girl questions later,
Sure.
But I want to talk about Izzy more. And because you are so well known for your historical fiction, I'd like to know, what was your process? What kind of research did you have to do? Do you actually have a science background that you haven't been using? How did you make the leap from historical fiction to scientific fiction?
Well, it is different in that, of course, these stories are modern day. So the characters in the Izzy books have the internet, which means they have the whole universe of information available to them. It's really fun for me to write about girls who are living in the 21st century. I'm enjoying that very, very much. So that was different. And as part of my research, one of the most fun parts of my research for the Izzy books was I have met up with a bunch of girls. We called ourselves the Lunch Bunch. This was a group of girls who were just starting 6th grade, just like Izzy and her friends. And I would bring cookies and we would have lunch together. And they would talk about the difference between elementary school and middle school, changing classes, getting to class on time, having to try out for teams, remembering your locker combination. And they would also talk to me about the content of their classes, what they were learning. And they would talk to me about problems in the school building. Those girls were my inspiration, not only in terms of, not only sort of generally and globally, but also quite specifically, it was those girls who said, oh, you know, we hate more than anything else, speaking in front of a group. We just hate that. So they inspired the stories quite specifically in many cases. So my process began, and really my process of writing American Girl stories started the same way. I would always start by talking to the girls who were going to read the books that I was writing. I always started with my reader and wanted to know what her life was like right now. And in the American Girl books, of course, what I was trying to do was kind of create like a ribbon, a lovely ribbon of connection that flowed through time. It started with my girl, my reader, and flowed through time and connected her to this character who lived very long ago and very often very far away. And the ribbon was made up of things that they had in common. So in a sense, the process was similar, that I start with what matters to my reader. And I try to create characters, both in American Girl and in the Izzy books, that my readers will become friends with, because when that happens, then whatever happens to your friend matters to you. So in an American Girl book, if you're reading about Felicity living at the time of the American Revolution and having a disagreement with her best friend, because her best friend's family is loyalists and her family's patriots, that matters to you because you care about your friend.
Yeah.
And in Izzy's story, because you see this misunderstanding happening in the group, you care about that. And all the scientific metaphors and everything make sense to you because they're describing the emotional state that the girls find themselves in. And then, of course, when the girls are trying to solve the mysteries, they're really doing it out of, I mean, for fun, and they're doing it out of curiosity and a desire to solve a problem. But a big part of their motivation is also kindness. They want things to go well in their school. And so I think the girls who read the stories will identify with that as well, caring about your classmates and your teachers. I think all of our students now are kind of missing school and, you know, longing for the days where they were all together in their school building. And I think that they will identify with Izzy and her friends having this great feeling of responsibility and compassion and sort of a drive to make their school a wonderful place to be. So in that sense, in trying to have the stories resonate with my readers, it was quite the same. But oh my gosh, Nancy, it was so much fun to do the science research. Just this morning, I was reading the paper, and do you know scientists have found signs that it's possible that they're living organisms on Venus?
I just heard that too.
Isn't that fabulous? I get so excited about things like that. So it turned, you know, really everywhere you turn, science doesn't only happen in laboratories. We're all doing science all the time. Haven't we just recently learned how important it is to wash our hands and what happens when we wash our hands with soap and how we're killing germs? And we're all scientists all the time. And we all use technology all the time with remote learning. We've all become very familiar with technology and engineering. Aren't we all hearing about how engineers are making buildings safe for us now? And math, we apply math all the time. Every time you so much as divide up one of those delicious pizzas that some of the people are having right now, you're doing math. So I love showing these are natural, normal, everyday, organic parts of everybody's life. And that these girls apply that wonderful passion that they have for it in their interpersonal reactions, as well as to solve the mysteries in their school.
I really enjoyed both the illustrations and the little excerpts from Izzy's notebook where she uses the scientific method, and you see that process applied, and it makes it very accessible. But the illustrations in the book really bring each of those girls to life.
Oh, Nancy, I think the illustrator, Geneva Bowers, has done a brilliant job. You know, I'm going to humbly admit to you, and this was true with American Girl as well, I always feel as though the illustrators tell you more about the characters than any millions of words that I could write. When you stare into Izzy's eyes, you know, this is sort of a thoughtful, introspective. If you look at Allie's hair, it's like 6 straight out. You know, she's a very exuberant, energetic person. And I think Geneva has done such a wonderful job of capturing the personalities of these girls and how fond they are of each other and how messy Gina's room is. I just love the art.
Yes, I definitely did too. So, are these books likely to have dolls at some point?
I
Do you
don't think so.
know?
I don't think so. If someone wanted to be, with American Girl, I was always so impressed and pleased about the way girls would make adaptations to their dolls,
Hmm.
to be a best friend for, one of the characters. And if someone wants to do that, I think that would work fine. But no, I don't think that there will be any physical component or, accompaniment to these stories. They're intended for a slightly older reader because the
Yes,
girls are starting middle school. They're intended for a reader who's probably already 10 or 11 years old. So
that
not that 10
definitely.
and 11-year-olds don't play with dolls. Don't hear me. They do.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I wanted to ask you a little more about writing a series, and how far out do you plan? Is it all your ideas? Are you working with a team to kind of lay out the structure of where this is all going?
I love this question. What usually happens is I become kind of curious myself about, in the case of Izzy, a mystery, or in the case of American Girl, a period of history. And then both with American Girl and National Geographic, I write a very chatty description of a story I would like to tell. And sometimes they'll say, yes, that's great, go and do it. And other times they'll say, well, no, how about this change? How about that change? So it's very much a team effort, which I love. Um, I really think we're all meant actually to depend on one another. And I love the creative spark that somebody else will give you, especially when one of your ideas isn't going to work and someone says, I don't think that's going to work, but how about, and then you think, oh my gosh, I can't wait to try that. So I write kind of a chatty, how about this? How about that description? And then when I get the green light to go forward, then I write my first draft of the book. And then there's a lot of discussion about that as well. In the case of the American Girl stories, I was always so fortunate to have researchers and to have historians who had studied the period that I was writing about, had spent their lives studying that period. And they would say, no. In the case of the Josefina books, for example, they would say, oh no, a little girl would never speak to her father in that manner. She would, she would wait for him to ask her a question. And in the case of the Izzy books, scientists would react to how I had presented the scientific problem and be sure that I was being authentic and accurate about that as well. So it's very much a collaborative effort, which I enjoy tremendously. Also, all through the years with American Girl and then also with the Izzy books, I get lots of suggestions from the girls who read the stories that I write. One time a girl wrote me a letter and she said, I broke my arm. I want you to write a story where Felicity breaks her arm, please. And it turned out to be a very interesting story to write. So I get very specific suggestions from the girls who read the books that I write. And I have some pen pals that I have had since they were 8 or 9 years old. One of them is in her 3rd year of residency in medical school. And we were writing back and forth. And she sent me the most wonderful idea for an Izzy story. She said, what if the girls go swimming and then they get out of the pool and their hair has turned green? They're going to have to figure out why their hair turned green. And she had this whole, I just love ideas like that. So I never know where my ideas, the suggestions for really good plots are going to come from.
Well, I definitely liked the teaser at the end of this book, which leads us to the second one in the series, because it looks to me like it takes place in the library. And I really liked your librarian at the school, Ms. Okiki, is that right?
Yes, yes.
So am I right? Is it going to be in the library next time?
Yes, the mystery happens in the library. Everyone who goes to the library seems to be sneezing and coughing and getting headaches. And we can't figure out what's going wrong. Why is this happening in the library? So Izzy and her friends have a couple of hypotheses, and then they figure out what the problem is. And I will tell you that I went to a party and I was just chatting with a friend of mine who's a forensic engineer. And he said, oh, hydrostatic pressure. I went home, looked it up, did all this research. It turned out to be just a wonderful problem to have in a school. And then in this case, it's a little different from the first book, because in this case, the girls solve the mystery and then try to solve the problem as well. And that leads to many messy, dirty and dangerous adventures, which of course they enjoy very much.
Oh, that sounds great. So is Ms. Okiki based off of any particular librarian in your life, or?
So many of my very dearest friends are librarians in elementary schools and high schools and public libraries. And she's kind of an amalgam of all the wonderful librarians who just love to help lead you to wonderful books. And librarians have been my connection. I often speak at libraries. I wouldn't be writing this National Geographic series if it were not for my friend Carolyn Johnson, who is a librarian in the school and invited me to speak at the school. And that's where I met Becky Baines from National Geographic. So I hope you owe Carolyn a huge thank you. So Mrs. Okiki is kind of an amalgam of all the wonderful librarians to whom I owe enormous gratitude.
Well, thank you on behalf of librarians for writing about a good librarian. I always
Wonderful librarian.
when I see the mean librarian trope in books.
I don't know any mean librarians
either. Okay, so one more science question. Do you think that this pandemic we're all living through will appear in any of your books?
Yes, I'm just figuring out how to talk about the pandemic. I'm not sure that I would have a whole book set during the pandemic. It might be more of an online feature, more of an interactive feature, showing the way my characters are speaking to each other and interacting with each other during this period of time on Zoom, or posting ideas, or saying, Marie saying, oh, look, now I've dyed my hair, stripes. That it would be lots of ideas in that way. But yes, we definitely have to talk about it. And, I'm glad you brought that up, Nancy, because, in a way, the whole series is a thank you to scientists and technologists and engineers and mathematicians who have seen us through this period. I can't think of a more timely topic to talk about than STEM, and a more important thing to do than to encourage all those girls out there who love science to pursue that passion and to realize that it's open to them. There's a section in the back of the book that's about National Geographic explorers, young women who are doing the most exciting research right now. One young woman's building robots that can go deeper into the ocean than human beings can go. Isn't that cool? And the other one is exploring the effects of climate change on plants and our food chain. And I just I'm hoping that somebody who will read the book will say, that's it. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do too. So in a way, the whole series is a thank you to scientists who are out there right now, and scientists who have gone before, who have helped us all so much. So yeah, it's a great pleasure to dwell in this scientific world.
Well, I think this series has so much potential to motivate and inspire future scientists. So
if you have any
ideas,
or any mysteries that have happened in your library, feel free to write to me and let me know. I love hearing from people.
All right. Well, and all of our readers who are listening right now, it sounds like you could send your ideas to Valerie Tripp, and you might see them in a future book. So that's great. Okay, I have to ask some American Girl questions, because those books have been around for 34 years. And I want to know, how has their success impacted you as one of the original authors? And also, do you have a favorite American Girl character?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. And it's as if I'm a mother with many, many daughters. And I love them all, like Izzy and her friends. They're very different one from another. So when you write about characters, it gives you a chance to pretend that you are like that character. So when I wrote about Molly, for example, it was really fun for me to write about someone who, Molly's a little bossy. And then when I was writing about Josefina, she was so thoughtful. And when I was writing about Samantha, she was so caring about other people and so gracious. And Felicity was so brave. So I would say, Felicity, you go out in that thunderstorm and ride your horse. I'm way too chicken to do such a thing. But you have a vicarious experience. So I love all the characters because they are so different one from the other. And I've loved the opportunity to write about all those different periods of history, because you get to imagine what it would have been like to live during those periods of history as well. So I can't say that I have one all-time favorite character. It was whoever I was working at the time was usually my favorite one, because I was so immersed in her world. The music and the movies and the clothes and the food and everything in her world was my world. So she was usually, whoever I was working on was my favorite. And then to answer your first question, you know, Nancy, it's funny. Whenever I write a book, I write with sort of one reader in mind. I'll write with, you know, Nancy in mind. It's like, I want to have a conversation with you, Nancy, and make you laugh. Or as you have said, have you read something and say, I didn't know that. And I don't really think of a huge group of people reading the books. I really want to think of reading as a very intimate and independent thing that we do. And when we read, we're partners with that author. My readers are my partners. They do 50% of the work because they imagine the story. They feel the emotions. They have ways they hope things are going to work out. A lot of times they'll write to me and say, no, I didn't like the ending. I don't like the ending that you have of Molly's birthday book, because we never get to see what kind of cake she has. So I have written an ending for that book. And I love that. There's so much, they so participate in the story that I love thinking that we're working on it together. So I don't really think of lots and lots of people reading the stories. It's more like one wonderful reader. And the fact that the stories have been around for so long, to tell you the truth, puts me on my mettle. It means that I have to try always to try something new, try something I'm just a little bit scared to try, actually. When National Geographic asked me what I'd like to do a STEM series, I thought, I haven't done that before. I don't know if I can do that. And then part of you as a writer thinks, ooh, I would love to try. I would love to try that. You know, part of you always wants to try the new thing. So I feel as though every story I've written, and every girl I've spoken to and met, and every teacher and every librarian has sort of helped me along this road toward right where I am right now. And I owe it to all of them to keep trying new things and keep trying to write stories that will resonate and feel authentic. And so I guess just the fact that they've been around so long shows me that that it's a challenge for me to have my next book worthy of those readers. And it also shows me a wonderful thing, which is that while many, many things have changed in the world for girls growing up, there are some things that actually haven't changed all that much. You know, the way we get along with our friends and how much our friends mean to us, and how we feel when something goes wrong, and the fact that we all make mistakes. We completely all make mistakes, and what we do after that mistake, that's what matters. And the fact that we're always growing and changing. We can never go backward. We're always changing and finding out new things and facing new challenges and finding new strengths too. So while, you know, the Josefina's world looks very, very different from, say, Mary Ellen's world growing up in Florida in the 1950s, certain things about being a girl growing up really haven't changed. And that's a lovely, lovely, just a lovely, heartwarming thing for me to know.
So I completely agree with you. I think that's that thread that you mentioned, or a ribbon, connecting the readers to those girls because of those commonalities. I was interested because I of course went back to our library bookshelf, and there weren't very many books in right now. They're checked out, but I found a few of the original American Girl books, and those first girls had a very, I guess, formula to each set of books. There was Meet Kit, Meet Molly, Meet Samantha, and then there was always one about their birthday and the holidays. And I looked on the American Girls website, and those books have been retitled, so they don't quite look the same, but when you peek inside, it is the same story. It looks like maybe there's been some editing. Were you involved in that process?
Yes, I
Of
was.
updating those books.
Yes, and you know, I can tell you're a librarian because you're a very careful reader. I'm delighted that you noticed that. What I always hoped was that the girls would read, you could read the books horizontally. That is, you could read all the books about Kit, or you could read the books vertically, and you could read what was school like for Kirsten versus what was school like for Samantha or Kit or Molly or Mary Ellen. So you could compare what their life experiences were, education, their birthday, their summer adventures, and then changes, you know, sort of the leaping off to what came after the period of time covered by the books. Now, the first 3 books have been put together in one volume, and the second 3 books have been put together in one volume. And part of what I had to do when I was editing was, when there were 6 separate books, I would have to repeat, you know, Kit's family is in danger of losing their house because her father has lost his job. I would have to be sure if you picked up the 5th book, it made sense to you if you hadn't read books 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when the books were put together, I could take that part out. I could take the repetition out, and that made more room for illustrations, which is wonderful because the books where they're in the volumes have the gorgeous illustrations back in, and the peek into the past nonfiction essays about the period of time covered by the stories as well. So yes, I did some pruning. And you know, Nancy, sometimes you can spend a whole week writing a paragraph. And so sometimes I always like to say to people who are interested in being writers, you know, children who are interested in being writers, that there's always a lot of editing and changing, and you never get the story just perfect the very first time. There are always changes. And can you imagine how wonderful it felt to me to go back to a story I had written 30 years ago and sort of say, well, we don't need this part. I can't imagine another writer having that wonderful experience of saying, okay, we don't need this part, and you know, we can morph and change it. It felt wonderful to revisit those characters and to, you know, laugh at those same jokes again, or be worried about the same problems that the characters were facing again. So it was a wonderful experience to go back and prune and distill those stories.
That sounds like a writer's dream, to get
Yes.
that do-over.
Yes,
because
exactly.
you know, once that book's in print, it's the words are stuck there on the page.
That's right.
You got a little bit of a do-over, so that's awesome. So one of my questions was advice for kids who might be thinking about writing, and you've just talked about that.
Well, really, my main advice to anybody who's interested in writing is one word, and you're going to love this word. If you want to be a writer, read. Because while you're reading, even unconsciously, you're absorbing the shape of a story, what makes a good plot, what is good dialogue. In the most pleasant, enjoyable way possible, you're learning to be a writer as you read. And the more you read and the more variety of things that you read, the better.
Well, and we have a question from one of our viewers asking, what do you read? And I want to add to that question, because I've been having a hard time reading new stuff. So I've been rereading my favorites. And so what do you read, and what do you reread? I'd like to know both.
I usually have at least 3 books going at a time. And I am a voracious reader and always have been. You can see some of my books behind me. My COVID crisis project was alphabetizing my books by author. And I will tell you that behind me, we only get as far as D. That's how many books I have. So, so I read new books that are recommended to me. I love historical fiction, especially things about World War I and World War II. I'm fascinated about that period of time. And I read a lot of nonfiction too. My husband and I both just read The Splendid and the Vile by Eric Larson, which was a wonderful book about Churchill during World War II, and a wonderful book called The Fastest Man in the World, which is about a Black man who was the fastest man in the world on bicycle, turn of the last century. So I love reading nonfiction. I love reading fiction. I have read and reread, I especially like 19th century fiction. I have read and reread, you know, Jane Eyre so many times, and Middlemarch. I love books like that. And just for my birthday, which was on Saturday, my daughter gave me the complete works of Jane Austen in those beautiful Penguin editions. So I read and reread those books all of the time too. There are also children's books that are so much a part of my heart and soul that I reread them every year as well. When I was in the 3rd grade, my sister, for 35 cents, my sister bought Understood Betsy by Dorothy Canfield Fisher from Scholastic Book Club. I read that book every year. I love that book. I also love a book called Small Steps, The Year I Had Polio by Peg Carrot. If you haven't read that book, it's nonfiction. Wonderful, wonderful book. I love Beauty by Robin McKinley. I absolutely love The Sherwood Ring by Elizabeth Marie Pope. I love The Witch of Blackbird Pond. You can see a lot of it is historical fiction, and I read and reread these. I just reread all the Anne of Green Gables books all the way through. I love Beverly Cleary. She's right here because she's C, so I love Beverly Cleary. I reread her books all the time. I love The Secret Garden, all of those wonderful books by Frances Hodgson Burnett. So, and I also read, you know, classics like Tom Sawyer and The Three Musketeers, and I like myths. Should I stop? Because and I also love short stories, and maybe one of the most wonderful books I just read recently is right behind me. It's The Source of Self-Regard by Toni Morrison. I went on a big Toni Morrison kick, so I've been reading Toni Morrison, and then this is a nonfiction book by Toni Morrison, which is, if you haven't read it, Nancy, you'll absolutely love it. It's one of those books, it truly changes your life. It's so good.
Wow.
Really
well,
beautiful.
Okay, that one's definitely going on the list. I'm actually a major audiobook reader. Do you listen as well as read?
Yes, and isn't it fascinating how you get a different point of view when you listen to a book? And sometimes I'll start to read a book and then switch to audio, and you get a whole different feeling for the book, don't you?
You do.
It's wonderful. I think it's like cross-training, that you're using your sense of hearing when you listen to the audio book, as opposed to, you know, being all cozy and reading in bed, or using your eyes. And some books, my daughter and I were just talking about how we both love E.B. White. And we were talking about how some of the scenes are so vivid, we thought they were illustrations. And when we went back to the book, in fact, the scene was not illustrated. It was just described so well that we both had very clear images in our heads. Isn't that wonderful?
Wow, that is wonderful. I love the audiobook version of Charlotte's Web.
I do too.
I once heard an interview with him that it took him about 8 tries to read the scene where Charlotte dies without getting emotional.
Yeah.
And
that's a wonderful book.
A good audiobook like that, especially with the right narrator,
yes,
takes you into that world.
But I'm fascinated to know too what you are reading and what the girls listening to the program are reading as well. I'd love to know what children are enjoying now, what books they're reading.
I just finished Rebecca Stead's new book, The List of Things That Will Not Change.
I like her.
I follow a blog called Heavy Metal, which is about the possible Newbery winners in children's fiction. So that's one that I got off of that list, and I really, really did love it. And, you know, my guilty pleasure of audiobooks, I am actually re-listening to Harry Potter right now.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, that's such a wonderful universe to enter into, isn't it?
Yeah. I can't wait to get in the car every day.
Yeah, I know. And then you get where you're going, but you think, no, I'm not getting out of the car yet, because I want to hear the end of this chapter. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm watching the chat to see if anybody's going to tell us what else they're reading, but we do have another reader question asking, how did you get your first book published?
Well, the first book I ever wrote was an autobiography, and I wrote the story of my life when I was 7 years old, and I am embarrassed to tell you that a lot of it wasn't true. I made my life a lot more exciting than it really was. I still have it, actually. I did illustrations and everything. Luckily, that book was not published. But right out of college, I was lucky enough to get a job with Pleasant Roland, who's the person who created American Girl. And this was 10 years before we did American Girl. But in that job, I wrote stories to help children learn how to read. There are a lot of them on the shelf behind me as well. Songs and stories and poems and games and short stories to help children learn how to read. And I will never forget the excitement of seeing that first book, holding that book in my hand. It's like magic, something that was an idea in your head that you can hold in your hand. So my first books were books that children use in school. And then Pleasant had the idea for American Girl, and I went on. Molly was my first character. I actually don't know how many books I have written, Nancy, but I will tell you, when I held Izzy in my hands for the first time, I was just as excited as I was when I held my very first book in my hand. I can't tell you what it feels like to have the finished product and to think, this is going to start friendships for me. This is going to start communication with people I don't even know. This book is going to be, we're going to share laughter and shared knowledge. It's just this, I think of this book as this wonderful open door that I open the door and people walk through, and then we have this wonderful relationship afterwards. So I guess I would say my very first book was probably a book that had songs and stories and poems and things for children to do, all to help them learn how to read.
Well, and now you're writing books that help them love reading, which
Thank you.
librarians are very grateful for. We actually have a comment from our children's library manager here at Maine who says, "Thank you for the American Girl books," and I have to move my window over so I can see her comment, "and explaining the different ways to read them. Hadn't thought of that. It just came across my news feed during this interview that there is a new historical character coming. Courtney from the 1980s. I feel old." Yeah, when did historical become when we were adults?
Well, the 1980s are a long time ago. Now they're a long time ago, 40 years.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Another person wrote in, Sabura, said that they are reading The Serpent's Secret right now, which I have not read.
Ooh, I wonder if that's part of a series. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I'll look that up afterwards. I always feel as though when someone tells you the title of a book, it's a gift. It's a present, isn't it? I love that. A lot of times with my phone conversations, I have a pencil in hand. If a friend mentions a book, you want to be sure to write that down and seek it out. So now, The Serpent Secret, I will seek that out. It sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Anything with serpent and secret in it, it's got to be good.
I'm sure it is. I do the same thing. I keep a list of ideas, and sometimes I will call the friend who recommended it and say, "I can't believe I waited so long to read this thing you suggested. It was so good."
Yes, thank you. A friend just suggested a book called House of Dreams, which is a biography of Lucy Maud Montgomery, who wrote all of the Anne of Green Gables books and Jane of Lantern Hill and many, many, many books. I love reading about writers. I love reading about Louisa May Alcott. There's a wonderful book called Marmee and Louisa by Yves Laplante. I love reading about Beverly Cleary. She's written a 2-volume autobiography. And very often you will find that what the authors have done is take elements of their own lives and sort of shine them up a little bit and change them a little bit and use them in their stories to sort of make their stories, their life, turn out the way they kind of wish it could have turned out. It's very impressive with what they have done.
Well, that is a really great segue to what might be our almost last question. Kathy wants to know, which character are you most similar to? And if you could be one of your characters, who would you be?
Oh, I love this question. That's a wonderful question. I suppose in some ways I am most like Kit, because of all my American Girl characters, she's the one who wants to be a writer. So her way of being in the world and that way of wanting to be observant and curious and participate in things. And then, like Kit, one of the pleasures of being a writer is telling the story you want it, the way you want it told. And I grew up in a big, giant, noisy family. And my husband grew up in a big, giant, noisy family. And now we have a big, giant, noisy family of cousins. And when you write, you have a chance to get your say. So I think in some ways I really loved writing about Kit and identify with Kit and would say that I'm like Kit because we're both writers. And was the other part of the question, do I have a favorite character?
Yeah, which if you could be one of your characters.
Oh, if I could be one of my characters.
And also Kathy says that Kit looks like you. Is that a coincidence?
Well, we both have freckles. We do both have freckles. I think right now, if I could be one of my characters, I would like to be Gina Carver in the Izzy stories, because Gina is an inventor. And I'm going to tell you this absolutely honestly. I daydream about being able to find solutions to some of the problems that we're facing right now. Maybe I would have to call upon the whole SMART squad to help me solve mysteries and reveal truths and I would love to come up with solutions to, the virus and how we could keep people safer and make transportation safer and schools safer. So right now, I think I would yearn to be as good an inventor as Gina Carver is.
Well, I think that we all need a SMART squad, and working together is how we'll solve those problems. So,
yes.
Izzy Newton's given us. She's a good role model.
She is. It was my lunch bunch who said to me, we're not. The idea isn't for us to solve things separately. The title of the book was Absolute Hero, and the last line of the book is there isn't any one absolute hero. It was all of the girls working together. And that was directly inspired by the Lunch Bunch girls who said, we're not really intended to have to do things by ourselves. We're intended to ask for help and to help one another. So I just incorporated that idea in the story.
Well, I think that's a great message for all of us. One more question. Kelsey wants to know, how did COVID impact your writing? Well, and I'm guessing that maybe Izzy Newton, the first book, was written pre-COVID.
Yes, both books 1 and 2 were written pre-COVID. So one of the things that COVID did, which I appreciate actually, was I feel as though all of us today are participants in a scientific experiment. Not that we asked for this, but we're fools if we don't learn from this experience. And one of the things I learned during this COVID period was that it's actually a good thing for me to have fewer distractions. And I've loved and felt so fortunate that I can live in this world of imagination, and that I always have something to do, that it wasn't a hardship for me to be home and shelter at home, because I could use the internet to find out the answers to the questions that I needed. And I always had this wonderful place to go, sort of metaphorically, this place to go. So one of the influences COVID had on me was to teach me to be sure to devote time to my writing and realize how fortunate I am to have this wonderful, wonderful job. And it also, as I said before, re-inspired me to write this STEM series out of gratitude to the scientists who have gone before. There are many women scientists whose names we may not know, but to whom we owe a great deal. They discovered many things that we all depend on and use every day, from windshield wipers to, languages for computers to communicate with one another. So it sort of re-inspired me. The COVID crisis has re-inspired me about the importance of science, fact, and evidence, and re-inspired me to write something that's kind of, as I said before, a thank you to all those wonderful scientists out there. What a wonderful, thoughtful question. Thank you, Kelsey. See how wonderful these girls are? They come up with these brilliant questions.
Okay, here's one from Ben, who would like to know, what's your writing process, and do you have a favorite place to write? Are you sitting there right now?
No, this is a fancy background, and it's good that you cannot see my desk, Ben, because it's a mess. Actually, it's cluttered, but I do know where everything is. Even though it doesn't look as though I do. So my writing process is I do, sit down every morning at about 7:30, and you have to be present. Some days, Ben, the words flow out, and other days it's like digging a ditch and you think, this is not working today. So, but it's important to just be present and keep trying. And you never know which is when inspiration is going to strike and when the story is just going to flow right along. And sometimes my fingers can't keep up. My fingers on the keys can't go fast enough to get all of the ideas down. And other times I'll write something and think, oh, that's terrible. That's just terrible. And I'll delete the whole thing. So my process is kind of like the bunny hop, I think, and maybe 2 hops forward and 1 hop back. I would say it's a process of trying really hard to get into that space where you're so deep into the story that you don't even realize how many hours have passed, how many hours have gone by. I do love the unexpected element of it. I don't actually always know how my stories are going to work out. My characters surprise me. Ideas come along that surprise me. And so I love that aspect of it as well. Kind of like, oh, okay, I didn't plan on that, but all right, let's try that. So it's a process that gives you back as much energy as you put into it. Mm-hmm. That is not to say that I don't have to throw a lot away. And then sometimes I'll write something and think, well, I'm just going to keep that for the future. It doesn't work right now. So it's a bumpy, but very enjoyable process. And again, I have a lot of people who help me, my editors and all the girls who read the stories who give me ideas, and all the children in school who've given me ideas, boys and girls. So it's a very enjoyable process. Never the same 2 days in a row.
That sounds pretty idyllic.
Yes. My daughter used to say to me, Mom, why don't you just write it right the first time? And I would think, I wish I could just write it right the first time.
Yeah.
But usually it's at least 4 times.
I think editing is super important.
It is.
And yeah, it makes it better.
I always have a lot of ideas. I have trouble making myself sit still and write the ideas out. And I'm also a terrible speller. Sometimes spell check doesn't even know what word I was trying to spell because I've spelled it so incorrectly. It will give me suggestions, and none of those suggestions is the word I was actually trying to spell. So I always like to say that to people too. Writing, it's the momentum, it's the plot, it's the emotion. You have a lot of time to tidy it up and be sure everything's spelled correctly and your grammar is correct. Just pour out the story that wants to be poured out. Clean it up later on.
Yeah. All right, well, here's our last question. When is the next book coming out?
I think it will be, if the first book just came out this September, it will be next summer. Okay. It's very exciting to me because the illustrations, which we spoke about, wonderful artist, Geneva Bowers, is working on the illustrations in the second book right now. The illustrations take as long, if not longer, than the book to write because they could go through many iterations as well because they're so important to the story, all the detail. Very, very important. So Geneva's working on those illustrations now, which I can't wait to see. And then I'm already working on the third book about Izzy. And so that will be out probably 6 or 8 months after the second book comes out. I love the second book. I can't wait for you to read the second book. That was a lot of fun to do.
Me too. I will be first on the list when
You're great, Nancy. That's
when we have it here. So thank you so much for spending time with us here in Toledo tonight. It's been wonderful to talk with you and revisit our old American girlfriends and hear about Izzy Newton and her friends who I think are going to inspire lots of future scientists. So,
well, thank you. And thank you to all the wonderful people who called in with these great questions. That was really, really fun. I appreciate it. Many, many thanks to everybody.
For everybody watching tonight, this has been recorded and will be posted on the library's Facebook page. So you can catch up with it, share it with your friends, or tell someone who missed it to go back and watch and learn more about Valerie Tripp and all of her wonderful books. And if you like programs for kids, be sure to join the library on Saturday mornings for story times, kids programs, and our special guest story time. That's every Saturday morning starting at 9. Thank you again, And I'm not sure how to end, so I guess this will just be it.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.